How we doing, folks? Your host Moose here on the Pitt Panthers Football Network as we welcome you back to our Season 6, Week 9 Around the NCAA Recap Show. Your Pitt Panthers coming off of a comprehensive 37-6 victory over the struggling Virginia Cavaliers. And it was a great performance all around for the Panthers. CJ Kirk wins Player of the Game, but to be honest, I thought it could have been any number of players on the offensive side of the football. Todd Sibley had a great game running the ball. I thought Davion Reynolds played well. Kirk was, of course, very good. We had some defenders that played really well. It was a great game all around. And when you win by 31 points, only give up 6 on the defensive side of the football, you know it was a very, very solid performance. Even Johnny Madej, 51-yard field goal in the first quarter. So a great game all around and a really impressive performance. Offensively, 461 yards, 253 yards running the ball. I think that's our best game running the football all season, and finally gets us back to the way that we probably wanted to play, knowing that we had 3 really good running backs in our backfield and a freshman quarterback who was a decent runner. I think when you looked at our roster coming into the season, the stat line we're looking at right now, 250 running yards, about 200 passing yards, is probably along the lines of what you wanted to see. 25 passes by our starter. Of course, we had a couple of passes both on either trick plays or when we brought in the backups, but 14 of 25 passing, 200 yards, a couple of touchdowns from your starting quarterback. I think that's probably the way we wanted to play this season. Of course, it's been a little bit different just because of the fact that Kirk's been so good. Our running game hasn't been great, but it was a very impressive performance. Kirk did have a rushing touchdown, even though he only had 12 yards on the ground. Davion Reynolds, 104 yards rushing on 11 carries. Todd Sibley, 109 yards rushing on 11 carries. They each had a really big run. Reynolds had a nice one for 37. Sibley had a 43-yard touchdown run. Jay Keys led the way, 5 catches for 62 yards and a touchdown. Reynolds had 3 catches out of the backfield, so showing his versatility. And then we used so many different receivers. Paul Lease had a diving touchdown grab. Ogden had a great catch on a bomb for 30 yards. KJ Welsh had one catch and he had a great sideline grab. He also had a drop that was disappointing. So overall, the thing that we like to see is we're able to spread the football around. We don't have any superstar receivers other than Jay Keys, which is why he always leads the team in receiving, it seems like. And then the rest of the team, we just spread the ball around as needed because they make plays when we need them to do so. Same with our defense, to be honest. Last year, Avery Heller finished every game with like 10-plus tackles, led the way. We've done a nice job spreading things around. Calvin Carlson's had a good season. Ronnie Baker, 6 tackles, 3 for loss. Jalen Hills, 5 tackles, 3 for loss. Quell Hampshire was very good. Hills, Baker, Adarion Mitchell, Bordeaux, Hampshire, all with sacks. Baker and Hills, our defensive ends, each with 2 sacks apiece. Calvin Carlson had an interception on one of the opening drives of the game. We even had a bunch of passes defended. I think it was the most passes we had defended all season. 5 passes defended. Laughlin had 2, Hampshire had 2, Heller had 1. A great game from our defense, probably one of the best ones they've had all season. We did give up a ton of passing yards still, but that's what's going to happen when the other team's down by a ton of points. They're just going to try and pass the ball. We even had 2 forced fumbles. We didn't recover either of them, but we did have 2 forced fumbles. The one fumble recovered that it showed there was Davion Reynolds because, of course, if the opposing team takes a field goal from like 55 yards, and they're using a kicker that I know there's no chance he's going to make it or make it to the goalpost, I treat it like a punt, and I just take it out of bounds to the 20 like a touchback of a punt. So just to make things look normal. But incredible game. I mean, we held Virginia to negative rushing yards. I don't know if we've ever held a team to negative rushing yards over the course of this entire dynasty. I'd have to look back through the 6 seasons. But that may have been the best performance we've ever had. Obviously, it was helped out by the sacks, but Trey Johnson, 10 catches, 104 yards, so we know he's an elusive back. He got nothing going on the ground. We shut him down on the ground. We forced them to throw, and that put them behind the 8 ball very early. It put them into a lot of 3rd and longs. They were able to get some first down, some yardage, but because they were in so many 3rd and long scenarios, it was so easy for us to shut their offensive attack down and just put together a pretty impressive performance. So very happy with that. We do have a bit of bad luck in that Brian Youngling did have to leave the game and will be out for 3 weeks with an abdominal strain. The only good thing for us in that regard is that we do have a bye week coming up, which means he'll only miss 1, maybe 2 games, depending on how quickly he's able to recover, because we do have a bye week next week before we take on Georgia Tech in a Thursday performance. Now, we did get some great commits from guys that visited. Joshua Stover, Thomas Weatherford, Perry Mills, all were visiting for that game, and they committed on the spot. They were so happy with the performance that they decide Pittsburgh is the place they want to be, so some great signings. Joshua Stover, number 41 tight end from Edina, Minnesota, chose Pitt over interest from Michigan, Clemson. I mean, he got interest from some big programs, but he's not exactly a superstar player or anything like that. I like his size, 6'5", 247. He's a receiving tight end, which is what I like to have, some versatility in that position, because we can train them to be blockers. You can't typically train them to catch the football, so I like having that. Perry Mills, run stopper, number 95 defensive tackle in the country. He's from Robinson, PA, which means he's from Pittsburgh area, suburbs, and so it'd be great to have some local talent on the team. Travis Brittain, Dunmore, PA product, defensive end. That's a project player. He's a little undersized, but I just like his motivation. I think he's a very determined player, and so I think that's going to make him an impressive player down the line. Marlon Capps from Florida, keeps that Florida pipeline going. Same thing, another guy that needs a bit of time and seasoning before he can be a contributor, but I like him a lot. And then Thomas Weatherford, run-stopping defensive end. He's a run stopper, but he's a little bit undersized. I think we'll probably try and turn him into more of a pass rush type player, but he should be a good player for us as well. We do miss out on Brian Jackson, strong safety from Pottstown, PA, so eastern side of the state, decides to stay out that direction and go to Temple in Philadelphia. He was also looking at Penn State and Pitt, so a lot of PA schools to choose from. He decided to go with the Owls and a better chance of playing right away. Stover, you can see 74 catching already, good acceleration as well as route running solid. His blocking's probably in the 60s, which means he's going to need a little bit of seasoning there, but we do have Jay Ballmer coming back next season. He'll be in the mix for starting tight end. Plus we have Christian Klump, freshman tight end, redshirting this year as well. He's a 4-star last season, so I think he's a guy that's going to be ready for playing time next year. Mills and Brittain, as we finish scouting them, again, the ratings aren't great, but it's one of those things that we do have players in those positions. As long as Malachi Bordeaux returns, we have Ryan Jacobs. We already have Mills is our second defensive tackle we've signed. We've signed a couple of defensive ends in this class, so Brittain and Mills will have some time to develop before we expect performances from them. Marlon Capps, we get a scouting on him halfway through his report, still 63 overall, needs some time to develop. And then Weatherford, 69 overall, so decent player, good power moves. Has good block shedding, good tackling, which is why he'll be a good player in both run stopping. But with that power moves and block shedding, I think when he's rushing the quarterback, he'll be very impressive as well. Jackson, decent player, doesn't have great speed, so probably more suited maybe to even a linebacker type role. Good tackler. His coverage is terrible in man, so more of a zone type guy, can play closer to the line of scrimmage. So I think linebacker would have been a better position for him, which we do need some linebackers, but he'll be a good player for Temple, so best of luck for him. And you can see the remainder of our class. We're pretty happy with it right now. We're really stepping up on the defensive side of the football because we know we've done a lot of recruiting offensively the last couple of seasons. We're going to have a lot of returning players on the offensive side of the football, and we're going to be missing a lot of players defensively next year, so we need to fill some of those positions, especially linebackers, defensive linemen. We're starting to get a little bit thin at those positions, and that's why you've seen such a heavy focus on the defensive side of the football in the recruiting class this season. Around the ACC, Miami's able to escape 35-33 with a victory over BYU. Boston College continues their assault on the ACC, blows out Wake Forest 56-28. Clemson 48-40 over NC State. NC State gave them all they could handle, but a 24-point second quarter from Clemson is able to give them the victory. Virginia Tech stays unbeaten, goes to 5-0 in the ACC with a blowout of Duke. North Carolina blows out Georgia Tech, and Florida State beats Louisville to go to 6-1 and make things very, very interesting over on the Atlantic side of the ACC. Tennessee 24-17 over an FCS squad, and they needed 2 fourth-quarter touchdowns from Jerron Ware to be able to get the victory. I know it says 38-17 in the scoreline there, but it was actually 24-17. Tennessee nearly upset by a late-game FCS school there, so impressive win. Oklahoma comes from behind. We saw they were down 39-35 in the fourth quarter. They ended up winning 42-39 on a Lacey touchdown run in the fourth quarter, so Taylor Savage and Oklahoma stay unbeaten with a victory there. Arkansas, like we saw, does get the 33-32 victory over Ole Miss. Great performance from the Razorbacks, 10 points unanswered to end the fourth quarter, including the game-winning touchdown with 2 minutes to play. Ole Miss unable to find that final field goal or touchdown to push themselves back in front, and Dustin Young and company end up losing for the first time this season. Notre Dame blows out Kentucky. Michigan needed double overtime to knock off Minnesota. What a game that was. The Wolverines end up with a touchdown pass with 1:53 to play to force overtime, and then they win it with a walk-off touchdown in double overtime to come from behind and knock off the Minnesota Golden Gophers. Washington beats Cal. Struggle season for Cal this year after nearly making the college football playoff last year. Stanford blows out Oregon State in a good matchup. Cincinnati still unbeaten with a win over Memphis. Houston loses their second in a row as they're blown out by Kansas State, so a bit of a rude awakening for the Cougars now in the Big 12 as they fall to 1-2. Virginia Tech, easy win. Penn State beats Rutgers. Florida 27-3 over Georgia in this one, so Clint Franklin leads the Gators to a solid performance. 27-3 in the world's largest cocktail party. Great win for the Gators, bouncing back from the loss to Georgia State. Texas 42-17 over TCU. A&M, huge overtime victory over LSU. The Aggies have struggled mightily this year, but they get a big win to knock off Ed Orgeron and the Tigers there. UCLA beats Utah, and USC, another win in Pac-12 play as they beat Arizona State. Players of the week, Early Townsend, freshman free safety for Texas State, 2 forced fumbles and a pick in a victory there over South Alabama for the Bobcats. And Travis Huff, he's climbing up the Heisman leaderboard very, very quickly. Another big performance, 5 touchdowns, almost 400 yards, 398 to be exact, in the victory over Duke. Gives him ACC and National Offensive Player of the Week honors, while Joe Monroe, outside linebacker for Wake Forest, 3 sacks, a forced fumble, 11 tackles, 7 for a loss for Wake. Despite the loss to BC, good performance for the junior outside linebacker. Some other looks around the country. Darnell Thornton, the senior corner for Wisconsin, couple of picks in their victory over Nebraska. And Justin Brattain, 149 yards and 3 touchdowns on the ground, plus 45 yards through the air. All of their offense runs through their backfield. Caden Mitchell, like we mentioned, is out. Justin Brattain is stepping up. The senior fullback, he's incredible. I look forward to seeing him playing in the NFL for sure with his physical ability. Great game for him. Iowa State with a victory over Texas Tech. Thomas Roberts had a pick 6, and Michael Robinson, the quarterback, 6 touchdowns. He's been incredibly impressive. The junior really coming out of nowhere, leading Iowa State to a fantastic season so far this year. Keegan Bentley, quarterback for Temple, we saw earlier this season, had a big game there. And then you can see Chris McGee for South Carolina, 4 touchdown performance, 7 receptions in the Gamecocks' victory over Missouri for another big performance this week that we like to spotlight. Travis Huff now leading the Heisman race after Dustin Young's loss. The undefeated Hokies looking very, very impressive this season. Young still in the Heisman race, of course, 3 touchdown performance in the loss to Arkansas, so another solid game, but Huff has the inside track now with another victory and a 5 touchdown performance. 5 touchdown win over Arizona State for Taylor Coleman, the senior quarterback for USC. Keeps him in the running. Jerron Ware, 2 touchdowns, 105 yards as he helped Tennessee escape a dramatic upset in their victory. And Taylor Savage, 4 touchdown performance as he led Oklahoma to a victory over Oklahoma State. The sophomore, 96 overall player. He's an incredible talent. He puts up a great performance as Oklahoma just keeps on winning and stays unbeaten. And they actually take over the #1 spot in the polls with Ole Miss's loss to Arkansas. Oklahoma, the new #1. Tennessee #2, Virginia Tech up to 3, Michigan up to 4, Cincy up to 5 as we see some of those undefeated teams continue to move up the polls. Iowa State now 7-0 after their victory over Texas Tech. They're up to #8 in the country. Ole Miss falls all the way back to #10 after their loss to Arkansas, who comes into the rankings at #24. UCLA at 11. Pitt stays stagnant at 12 with their big victory over UVA. Arkansas State jumps up to 14 as they're still unbeaten. Florida up to 16 after their win over UGA. Houston falls back to 18, losing to Kansas State, who jumps into the rankings at #22. 5-2, impressive season for the Wildcats right now. Florida State into the polls, 6-1, sitting at #23. Arkansas at 24 with their victory over Ole Miss. They've been up and down this season. 9 games played already for the Razorbacks. And Oregon's in as well at 5-2, #25 in the country. You can see a few teams dropped out and shift around in the polls following last week's results in terms of the national landscape. And with those games, Virginia Tech now inching closer and closer to an ACC Coastal Division title. They continue. They have the inside track on the Panthers, of course, because of the head-to-head victory, but Miami, North Carolina, and Pitt all technically still with a say in things, depending on how the remainder of the season may shake out, because Virginia Tech, of course, still does have 3 conference games to play. Miami, North Carolina, and Pitt all in the mix still, potentially for the Coastal title. Florida State, Clemson, Boston College, and Syracuse all technically still alive 5 for the Atlantic Division title. I think Clemson, Florida State probably would be your prohibitive favorites just at the talent level that they have. But with games still to play against the Eagles and the Orange, technically it's anybody's ball game in the ACC conference race. Some games this week, non-conference, Georgia Tech takes on UConn. Boston College, Virginia Tech is a huge cross-divisional game. Virginia Tech taking on a tough Boston College team who's been very good on both sides of the football. I think that's going to be a much closer game than teams would think. And Virginia Tech with a couple of big prospects in for this one as well. JT Granger, the third number 7 prospect in the country. Edwards, number 41 prospect in the country. The quarterback, couple of Virginia guys. And Virginia Tech will look to get their signatures if they can get a victory there. Syracuse taking on Louisville. Should be a great matchup. Syracuse 2-1 in the ACC so far this year. They've been a huge surprise, 5-2, looking to get back into bowl contention for the first time in quite a while if they can get a win. And then the rest of the way, BYU, Florida State non-conference, and some games between some weak ACC teams this year. Of course, your Pitt Panthers will be off this week, so we do have a little bit of a reprieve there from the Pitt coverage as we go through our week preview. Kansas State looking to pull upset alert on Oklahoma. They nearly fell to Oklahoma State last week. I think the Sooners will be a big winner this week because Kansas State, their defense has struggled this year. Oklahoma can really air it out, and I think they'll win this one. Iowa State looking to stay unbeaten against a West Virginia team that's underachieved. Of course, West Virginia went to the college football playoff last year, lost to your Pitt Panthers. They're struggling this year. They could pull the upset at home in Morgantown against the Cyclones. I think that'll be a good game. Same thing here. Michigan State looking to knock off Michigan. It's always an intriguing matchup when it's a rivalry game. Harbaugh finally has things going right for the Wolverines. They're unbeaten and looking to continue that run to finally get a Big Ten title here. Big game, South Alabama, Arkansas State in the Sun Belt Conference battle. Tennessee taking on a tough Mississippi State team that's been very good this year. Their offense has really struggled, but defensively they've been very, very good. Tennessee's been up and down, nearly lost last week. They'll have a tough task in store for them in their matchup this week. Texas taking on Houston, a great ranked battle. Texas always seems to be on the outside looking in the college football playoff picture. Houston was in the playoff last season after an undefeated regular season, ended up losing to the eventual national champions Alabama. They will look to get back on track after 2 straight losses in Big 12 play. ECU, Cincinnati, as Cincinnati looks to stay unbeaten. Good Pac-12 battle here as Oregon tries to knock Stanford out of contention and keep themselves in contention for the Pac-12 title still, as the Cardinal will travel up to Autzen to take on the Ducks in a great ranked battle. And of course, your game of the week, both teams a little bit of a struggle this year. Bama 2 losses, LSU 3 losses, but always a fantastic contest when the Crimson Tide take on the Tigers in Death Valley. That should be a fantastic matchup, and regardless of what it means for the national scale, we're excited to see what happens in that one. I like Bama because of how good their running attack is and how good their defense has been, but LSU has a great passing offense and should at least make this one interesting, that's for sure. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Let me know what you think is going to happen in some of the big games. We will have, probably sooner than typical, we won't have as big of a layoff because we don't have the Pitt game. So we will have the next week's recap coming up very shortly, heading towards the Pitt Georgia Tech game that will be in Week 11. So as always, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hail to Pitt. We'll see you soon. Take care. Bye-bye.